Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name's Mike. I'm a project coordinator here with Africa Fire Mission, and I'm so happy all you took time out of your busy schedules to join us today for today's training. Today's instructor is going to be Richard Gichina. He's a firefighter and EMT and also a volunteer with us here at AFM, and we're happy to have him with us today to lead today's EMS class about bone and joint injuries. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's class, which is usually around 40 or 45 minutes, you'll receive a certificate of attendance from today's training. Feel free to jump into the chat, introduce yourselves. If you have any questions throughout the training, you can put those in the chat and we'll open it up to questions at the end afterwards. After our training, AFM's fire safety advocate, Jose, is going to be hosting a tea time. Invite you all to stay for that as well. We say that's where the real business and the real learning takes place afterwards. Before we get started with today's training, I'm going to pass it over to Jose for our word of encouragement. Take it away, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, Chief Mike, and thank you so much, Richard, our instructor of the day, to attend, to come on this day. Yeah, as usual, I give the word of encouragement when I can. And today I was just, when I woke up in the morning, I was like, what will I speak about to this very important group of people, yeah, who are mostly not celebrated, you know. But today I just want to tell you that you are celebrated. And today I just needed to encourage us about what our duty is at the fire service. You know, we talk about duty, pride, tradition, and all those attributes as a firefighter. But really, what does duty really mean in the fire service? Well, duty is defined as one's post or work, a task or core one is expected to perform. And mostly this call, this chore that we are expected to perform is on the fire ground. And you know, guys, the fire ground is our battle ground. So what does it mean really as a duty? You know, what does it fall back to? It falls on training. It falls on constantly learning. It falls on you constantly teaching other people what you have learned. Because you remember, when you go to the fire scene, there's always two people who go in and two people who go out. So imagine yourself a situation whereby you've not trained the person you're going with. Yeah. So it calls for duty. It calls for being a leader, you know, being a leader in the battleground. Yeah. So our moral obligation as a firefighter is to be doers. Yeah. You're called to be doers and making sure that you get to teach, and also for you being ready to be taught, you know. So we are always constantly learning and constantly teaching. That is actually a call of duty. And remember, our battleground is the fire ground, and you always have to be ready. So every day is training day, and every day is learning day. Thank you for listening. Invite your buddies to join in today's class, and thank you for joining in. Back to you, Chief Mike.
Thank you, Jose. We always appreciate those words of encouragement. Appreciate you being here and sharing that with us. We're about ready to get started with our training today. I'll remind you to take a look in the chat. I'll be placing some information there where you can find a link to our Google Drive in case you get disconnected or you don't have the opportunity to finish off today's class. You can go back there, review the video from today's class, which is available on our YouTube channel, answer a few questions, and you'll be able to receive your certificate of attendance from there as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Richard to begin today's presentation. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much, Chief Mike. We really appreciate your efforts in today's lessons, in every day that you're always available for us. We really appreciate. It is not, we don't take it for granted. You being fair and being there to guide us, being there to give us advice, and also there to answer 1,000,001 questions that we always have. We really appreciate everything that you do. For Jose, thank you so much for being the connecting valve, the connecting horse from each and every side of our country. You've been traveling, you've been walking, you've been boots on ground always. We really appreciate you. And for fellow firefighters, wherever you are, feel appreciated, feel just that you loved, you cared for, and not by everyone, not by just anything, just by everything that we have. We are family, and we always be family. Thank you so much for finding time to come and join us today. So our lesson today we're going to learn a very simple thing. And the best thing we're going to learn is, today we are running on bones and joints, or what we call the musculoskeletal. Be free to ask questions. You can type, you can write, you can raise your hand. I'm sure Jose is there to watch on the raised hand. We will always, by the end of the lessons, be sure we'll have a question and answer session. So if you have any question, please ask. If you have a concern, anything you want us to talk about, anywhere you feel like you haven't understood, we will be more than ready to listen to you. We really appreciate your efforts. So basically, welcome to the class. The class is roaring and the class is moving on. We really appreciate your efforts, so that we can have like 1, 2. Don't be afraid because of the bombings, home injuries, motor vehicle crash, mass shooting, work-related injuries. These are just some of the few terms that we are going to learn today. We start by musculoskeletal is the bones. These are the bones that hold the body together. We always have accidents in our workplace, in our homes, our place, everywhere we can have an accident. So one thing we need to do is, what do we do after an accident? What can we do so that we can prevent that further injury of a person? Number one, when you get to anything that it connects anything, one thing you need to do, you have to be safe by yourself. Being safe, we say that you have to do a 360. A 360 means you go to the scene, you use your eyes. In this lesson, I want us to try and use our common senses, what we call the 5 common senses: eyes, nose, hearing, everything, the 5 of them. So you look at what? We look at a car, like a scene of a road traffic accident. We have vehicles. If you have accidents, we also have animals. We have guys who go with pets, like dogs, cats, and the people from the other side, they can carry small goats or kids. We have them. Then the other thing is the environment. How is the environment? Currently in Kenya, we have places that are raining. We have places that are very hot, like Turkana. It's always a little bit hot. We have rocky places, like people who are going for mountain climbing. It is very rocky. We have water in examples of river, lakes, dams. Then we have to check on hazardous material. If you look at our roads, we have these big lorries container. They carry diesel, petroleum. Some of them carry LPG. We have vehicles that they carry sodium chloride. We have chlorine. Such materials. Then we have hostile people. In Kenya, for example, in slums, we have guys who are always there fighting the firefighters, fighting the ambulance crew. So you have to be very, very careful. When you're doing this, you have to look at it. You see, you have to see what is trying to kill me as. So we're talking about PPE. The question we need to ask ourselves here is, do I have the right PPE for the right procedure? If I'm going for extrication, you make sure you have all the right PPEs. Then what comes next is, You have to know the name of the patient. You have to tell the patient who you are. You have to know who is there to help them. That's why we always say that you need to introduce yourself as, for example, like me. I'll say like, hey, this is Richard from so-and-so fire or Nyeri County Fire Department, and we are here to help you. Then you have to ask for permission. Then you have to ask for permission. Like, am I there to help you? I'm here to help you. Can I do? So number 4, or point number 4 is we get the information. Here now is when you're ready from all over, you at the patient, and you get to ask the questions here. You ask the patient, what is hurting you? Or where are you hurted? If the patient can talk. Then from there, you start getting the what happened. They will be able to tell you if the patient is conscious enough. They will tell you, like, for example, I was riding a bicycle and on the way I tripped and I fell down. Sorry, and then you ask them, then you can ask, do you have someone, or are you with someone, or are you alone? So that you can be able to know how many patients are you dealing with, or do I have another person? For example, this case is very evident, or is very, this question is very, very effective on motor vehicle crashes. Because we have parents with, they always carry their kids and they're not buckled up, or they don't have they haven't used the safety belt. Someone can be evicted from the vehicle, or they can be kicked out of the vehicle. So for you to know if you have another person outside, it is easier when you ask this question. Then the other thing, you don't go addressing patient like you. It is always very respectful to address them with their names. Like, sir, like say like Richard, how can I help you? Are you okay? Are you feeling well? Then the other thing is you have to ask the patient, what was the last time that you took something solid to eat? Because maybe they might be suffering from low sugars or low glucose levels. So for you to know that, so that you can be able to manage the patient well. Then the other question you need to ask them is, what do they need now? Because remember, that patient, they might be sick or they are not feeling well, but they have their own preference. Like they have people who have different choices of hospital. There are particular hospital they want to be taken. There are particular, maybe they are on medication and they know like how to take the medication. So you try to, all these questions you ask because you want to establish a rapport or a friendship between you and the patient. You want to have a trust moment for you with the patient. So basically, that was part of introduction on the lessons and some few here and there to go questions that we can be able to ask our patients. Today we are learning about musculoskeletal injuries. And the first rule of these injuries, we have only 3 rules. And the rules say we have respiratory system, we have circulatory. The respiratory system consists of the nose, the lungs, the trachea, the alveoli, all those. Then we have the circulatory system, which consists of the heart, the veins or the blood vessels, and the blood itself. We have the neurological system. These are complex systems, and we're going to learn about it in a few. So when you're doing things, we have some of these objectives that we want to meet as we move on. These are some of the skills that we are going to read. The objective mainly consists of you recognizing and also managing a particular injury or a particular set of injuries. So one we're going to learn about dislocations. Mostly happens with the shoulders, the ankles, the knee, the elbows, such. Then you have soft tissue injuries. These are muscles. By the end of the day, you'll find like some muscles that we have the tendons that can tear. We also have fractures. These are broken bones. Definitely, we have some few things we are going to also touch here and go. So we have spring, which are these are torn ligaments. We have strains, stretch. These are overstretched. When something is overstretched and they're so painful. One of the characteristics are so painful. Then you have fractures. These are bones. The continuity of bone is broken. Then we have dislocations, joints, with mainly most we said about the elbows, the shoulder giggle, and also the knee, and the ankles. Then we have mechanism of injuries. Mechanism of injuries in soft musculoskeletal, we have mainly trips. You move in and then you slide it and then you chip down. Then you have falls. For example, firefighters, we always have, we are very susceptible to this one. You're operating on others and you don't have the harness, you have not anchored yourself well, and then falls are very, very much, mostly we work with them all over. Then you have sporting injuries for those guys who do football and we do soccer. This one is caused mostly by contact. Sorry for that. Okay, engine coming back. We have sporting injuries. These are what we call the contact. The contact sports, football. Then we have the MVS. The MVS, these are motor vehicle accidents. We have crashes. We have gunshot wounds. Then we have impaled objects. These are normal anatomy of human shoulder. See, if you look at the formation, it is very, very easy. So when you find a patient with a different entity or with a different from what we can see, then we know that something is not right. So you see, now we have a dislocated shoulder. The ball and the joint, if you look at this one, the ball and joint, they are parallel and they are working well. So here, for you to notice if the shoulder is dislocated, by the end of the day, you see the ball or the bone that is the bone that joins the humerus, it is slightly down or is slightly dislocated. So here, it's just a comparison. You look at the normal and the dislocated one. Some of these, most of these parts you'll find out like they will result from either a blunt trauma or a fall. Something blunt is something that is not sharp. It hasn't cut through the skin. Management for a dislocated bone or dislocations. We have to learn about the signs. Signs, one you'll find like it is deformed. We learn from the normal, now we have to do, it is deformed. Then movement, it is always restricted because it's very painful. So the other thing is very painful. Assessment, you check on the distal pulse and the motor sensation. Motor sensation, the distal pulse, if you look at for example, if we look at the arm, if we look at my arm here, it is elongated from the shoulder. If the shoulder is injured, by the end of it, you can be able to tell. If you want to do the pulse part, you take the thumb here with the thumb. There is you go down using the thumb and here. You'll find what we call the radial pulse. If it is not normal, you can compare with the patient and yourself. Yours is very normal. So when you feel it, you can be able to feel, you can be able to notice, to differentiate between the patient and you. Then the other thing is you can check on sensation. You can try to ask them. If you check, you can try to ask if can they feel anything. You try to pinch, you try to pinch on the hand and the fingers to see if they can feel the pain. Treatment is the key to such injuries. Number one, you have to make sure if you have some painkillers on your ambulance, if you have some painkillers on a trauma bag, you can give them. If you don't have, don't go buying painkillers. And if it is not in the scope of practice to give medication, please don't, because you'll have issues with the authority. Then another thing, the other good thing is we do sprinting. You don't pull the hand as we see in movies. Most of the time you see movies, like you try to pull the hand. It is very bad because it's very, very painful. Then when you want to sprint, you sprint the hand in the normal position that you have found it. Can you give me a minute? I want to. Sorry for that, guys. We have some guys were coming over. Then the other thing is, if necessary, reposition the rib. If the patient is able to move the arm or the leg, you can. If they're not in a position to move the leg, please don't try to bring it back to the original position by pulling it or by forcing it back. It's so painful for the patient. Springs. If you look at a picture here, we have the picture shows some discolorization. A sprain, it is very painful for a patient. Mostly we find that the signs and symptoms, we find it like it's painful. It is swollen. It has changed in color. Then on movement, they're very, very painful. For treatment, you don't mobilize, you don't force the leg, you don't force the limb or what you call the hand or the leg to move. Make sure like the hand remains on the position that you found it. You can assist the patient to go to the ambulance. You can use the wheelchairs. You can use what you call the staircase wheel to move the patient from one point to another. You can also use the scoop stretchers to move them if the patient is on a higher rising or on a building. Stretches. The stretches or muscle or tearing of the muscle of the tendon. If you look at this picture here, you notice one of this side and the other side are different. This means this side is very normal and this side has teared. This is what most of the time there are people who we call them muscle pull or the muscle tear. There are people who we say like they feel it is very, very much painful. Most of them it will happen in contact sports or when you are exercising and you step on non-parallel side or surface that is not even. You'll find it is very painful also for the patient. You'll find them swollen some patient will have swollen. Then you will find it has decolorized or it has a bruising. For treatment, let the patient don't let the patient or the victim to use a lot of weight on that side, and then you can advise them to go to hospital. Make sure every patient you advise them to go to the hospital. Then assessment and treatment. One thing, assess the level of pain. In one time, you can use, for example, you can use the scale between 1 or 0 to 10. 10 being the highest pain and 0 being the lowest pain. That way you can be able to assess the patient. You find out that some victim will tell you it's around 7, it's on pain. Then you tell you it's around on 3 or 1 or 5, that pain is manageable. Then the other thing you check is the skin color. if we look at the strain here, you notice the color have changed. So that's why we say you have to make sure you get the skin color. Then you have fine patient telling you that they feel like that some pins are being that someone is trying to pin them on the legs. They're what we call the pins and needle sensations. They will tell you that. So you have to put on consideration. Then the other thing is check the pulse. What we said on the radio pulse, or you can do the dorsal, you can do the dorsalis pulse on the legs. Then the other thing is, most of them, you'll find them, they're in the ability to move. They don't want to move the leg. They don't want to move the limb or the hand, and so many other more. So here for you to be able to manage these things, or for you to be able to assess them, you look at what is normal. You can take a minute or some few seconds, around 30 to 45 seconds, to check on the patient. You can be able to see what is normal, what is not normal. So today's lesson, we said we are trying to incorporate all our sensations, all our senses. So management, number one, we check for ABC, ABCDE. So this means, A means we have to check for airway, B, we have to check for breathing, and then C, we do circulation. If there is breathing in anywhere, we control the breathing. Then you have to look at deformities. Deformities means is the body on its original normal anatomic position, or in the normal positions. Then E is about the exposure. If there is hazmat or hazardous materials that the patient has been exposed to, you check on them also. For airway, you check if the patient is you check if the patient is breathing or the airway is open. If you find a patient who is talking to you, it means their airway is open. Then for breathing, you check the rise and the fall of the chest. For circulation, you can check on pulse, that is the radial pulse, or you can check on the carotid pulse. You can check on the legs, or what's called the dorsal pulse. Then the other thing is you provide a pain reliever. A pain reliever can be you immobilize that leg, or you sprint that arm, or you sprint that leg, so that you avoid unnecessary motions or unnecessary movements for the limb. That is already, it's also okay. One thing, you'll have reduced the pressure of the patient always holding the hand, and sometimes it can get painful. Then we do RICE, and this is what we call RICE. RICE means you rest. The worst thing, when you have injuries, you make sure that the person has rested. Then you ice. If you have some ice, you can put some ice on it, and it will help in reducing the swellings. Then you can compress. Compressing means you use the bandages. You can use them to control breathing, to control the breathing. Then you can elevate. Elevation means you can raise. If it's a leg, you can make sure that it is raised well. Not so much, not so high. Remember we said we have to make sure, like you talk to the patient, it is always very necessary. You can tell them, can you be able to help us to raise the hand? So that all you can be able to do, we can ask them that they want to use the hand, if it is possible. So then from there, we mentioned some few things about the principle, the printing. Here are some of the principles of printing that we really need to put into consideration when we are doing everything else. Number one, you have to make sure that you have evaluated the mechanism of injury. Number two, you have like signs and symptoms. You check on the signs and symptoms of the patient. You have to know if it's a fracture, if it's a strain, if it's a stretch or a tendon tear, you check on them. Then the other thing is you have to perform usability test. How much is it possible for you to use that leg? Or how much is it for you? Is it good for you to sprint that matter? Then the other thing is When you are immobilizing the joint, make sure you immobilize the joint below the injury and another joint above the injury. For example, we take a hand. It has three joints: the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist. So, for example, if the person or the patient is complaining about the humerus bone, or you see like the humerus bone is so painful, and you assess and you feel like it's broken. One, you have to immobilize the shoulder giggle or the shoulder bone. Then the other thing is you have to make sure you immobilize also. You cover both the shoulder and you have to make sure you have to cover the shoulder and the elbow. If it's the elbow, if it's between the elbow and the wrist, you make sure you hold the shoulder at the elbow and the wrist. So as we continue, we perform when we have already evaluated the mechanism of injury. The other thing is evaluating the signs and symptoms. Signs and symptoms is the sign is what you can see. Symptom is what the patient can tell you about. Remember, they are the victim. They are the person who are suffering. So remember that the first time you said we have to make sure like we have a patient, the caregiver and the patient trust. This when now it comes to how, like, if you didn't have good rapport, you will end up having some issues when dealing with it, because pain, you have to ask the patient how much pain. Remember we said you can use a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being the highest and 0 being the lowest. They will tell you, they can be able to evaluate how much pain. Then tenderness, you have to feel with your hands. That one we have to check with your hands. You have to feel with your fingers. Don't go on pressing like you doing what? I'm trying to get a simple word that you don't go pressing the patient like or forcing issues. You have to feel with the fingers. Then they have the loss of power. The loss of power means they can't be able to control that. They don't have power over that hand. They don't have power over that leg. Then it's soaring, you can see. Then deformities, that's something you can see. Then you have irregular movement, like what we call the frilled chest or the seesaw movement of the chest. One part of the chest is coming up, the other one is moving down. They are not evenly. We have the chest supposed to move evenly up and down, up and down. So you find that the chest, one side is up, the other side is down. One side is up, the other side is down. So that it has irregular movement. Or the leg. You find that when the patient is looking at the side, then the legs or one of the leg or the ankle is looking behind. They're looking behind. So some of them. Then you have unusual movement. You know, like the hand is supposed to have power to control it. Then the patient lifts, you lift the patient hands, and then one side goes at the side. Then you have creptures. Creptures, they're sounds that are made when bones are crashing. When you're assessing your patient and you feel or you hear the crepitations, you know that person, that place, you know, like this place, we have either a cross fracture or an open fracture. So breathing also, we have to visualize, make sure like you use your eyes. If you see something that is breathing, you make sure, first of all, you control the breathing. And then number 3, you perform usability test. The kind of sprinting that you're going to use, how much of benefit is it to the patient? We're still continuing on the principles of sprinting. And one thing we always say in first aid or in response, we'll say one thing: please don't go for the complex things that you don't have in the ambulance. Don't call your boss to tell them you need a saga sprint. Don't call your boss to tell them that you need a SAM sprint. You need everything that is in hospital, and we don't have it on the ambulance or the fire. We use the locally available materials. So check on the distal pulse. When you sprint, before you sprint and after you sprint. This will help you to know or if you have done the correct sprinting or you haven't done the correct sprinting. So we check the distal pulse periodically or occasionally. In every, like for example, for me, I always tell people, it is always good if the hospital is too far away or your weight sprint, you can check it like after 5 minutes or after 10 minutes. If the patient is more serious, you check after 5 minutes. If the patient is more serious, you check after 10 minutes. Any question? We're done with the lessons. We've done a lot of things. We have a couple of minutes. We can continue with the lesson. With the questions, someone has questions, we're ready to answer the question.
There's a question on the chat. Let me grab it. Sharon Wanja asks, in a scenario where you suspect a closed fracture, which could become potentially open, is it okay to try to put the bones in the right position?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. It is not right. Simply because you don't know, you don't have the X-ray eyes that you can see inside the patient and know how much damage the bones have made, or to what extent. The bones might, if you try to get them inside, they might be neighboring a blood vessel. They might be neighboring a tendon. They might be next to a nerve. And by you trying to force them inside, you might end up causing more injury to the patient. So the best thing is, if you notice like it has a potential of getting to have an open, what you do the padding and then you immobilize the leg.
Let me also add on to that. It depends upon the level of training that you have. If you don't have medical training and you've got a fracture, it's best to just try to secure it or splint it in its place. If you do have more advanced training, there are times when pulling traction to reset an injury is a necessary technique. So you base that on the training that you've received, and if you have the equipment available. Of course, there's traction splints that are designed for pulling traction and placing bones into the appropriate place and hold them there until you get to the hospital. So just sort of keep in mind what equipment you have available to you and how much you've been trained to what level.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chief Mike. I have some few questions here with me. I don't know if we can be able to answer them. Yeah. What is the key criteria in deciding whether a patient with a musculoskeletal injury can be sprinted or stabilized in the field or need to be evacuated? You do the answer.
Yeah, let's do the answer. B, usability.
Yes. Remember one thing we said, which when we were starting things, we said like, if you have a pack and usability, okay, for this patient, they might be so serious. A stay-in patient is a patient who is not seriously injured. And the most patients who are need to be evacuated, we have if you do mechanism of jelly, the usability is okay. Then we have another question. Here is another question. Is that true or false question? Don't feel bad. The importance of what to assess in the field whether your patient has a sprain or a strain or a fracture. Is it important? So
The idea here is that it does not matter whether you don't need to determine in the field whether it's a sprain or a strain or a fracture. Your treatment's
Yes.
going to be the same. Okay.
Yes.
And that determination of whether it's just a sprain or a fracture. And there's a lot of times that you can't tell, especially with things like ankle injuries. Sometimes you can't tell whether there's a hairline fracture, whether it's just a sprain or a strain. So with the musculoskeletal injury, if there's indications of deformity or there's indications of pain that they're giving you from that area, you're going to immobilize that and then transport. In the field, we don't need to determine whether it's a sprain or a fracture. That can be handled when they get to the hospital.
Very true. So that's why we say it is not so much important. The most important is we manage the patient well and take them to hospital. So the key here is we have to make sure every patient or every victim that we assess has to be taken to hospital, or they have to report to hospital. We have another question. We have another question here. Which of the following is not a possibility, is not a possible sign or symptoms of a strain or a strain? We have deformities and angulations. We in agreement? The number for now, the other question, I think this is the last question we have then. How should you treat an unusable arthritic injury? Immobilize and elevate. So that brings us to the end of the lessons, and we can take back to Jose and Chief Mike.
All righty. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for being here with us today. We always love to get local instructors to teach our class. So thank you very much for your time being here. And thank you to everyone else for joining us today. We're going to wrap up today's formal portion of the training and move on to our tea time. I would remind you that you can watch our videos of this training and our other trainings at our YouTube channel. Just search for Africa Fire Mission at YouTube, and also check in the chat where I've placed some information on how you can connect to our Google Drive that has some extra materials from today's class and has some other places where you can watch the videos, answer questions, and receive your certificate of attendance. Thank you all again for taking time out of your schedules for the training today. Stick around for tea time in just a moment.